Hello, all y'all werewolves and ghouls out there in Radio Land. What time of the week is it? Well, we tell you scary stories about American imperialism and bone-chilling tales of corporate media bias. But then we find the vampire slayers in our community who are taking on the machine, the corporate beast, the capitalism. We interview local activists, local politicians, and, of course, activists and organizers from all over the place as well. What time of the week is it? Well, it is that very special time of the week where we dig underneath the headlines and we call out the establishment's BS. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. Now, as always, the following thoughts, views, and opinions are not necessarily those of 89.1 FM, WIDR Kalamazoo, or Western Michigan University, no matter how dope or insightful they may be. So we got a very packed show today. We've got a couple of candidate interviews coming up later on. We've certainly got a lot to talk about. It is Halloween, and it has certainly been a very scary week. We've really seen very visibly the rise of fascism, both in the United States and abroad. And we'll be talking about that at great length on the show. Did want to open up, make sure that we talked about an important local story. Because so much has been going on internationally and, of course, all across the nation right here, that we wouldn't want to leave out some important information about what's going on right here in our own backyard. So, excuse me. I wanted to give just a brief update. This was really, and I might not do a whole lot of commentary on this one, but I thought it was really important for everybody to find out about, particularly the student population and a lot of the non-drivers who listen to the show. But there is being a plan being put forth by Kalamazoo Metro to shut down about 200 bus stops. I'm going to go ahead and read right from the article. This was posted October 29th on the MLive website. Kalamazoo Metro's governing body accepted a plan to change the location of bus stops and improve accessibility throughout the county. A draft proposal finished in October shows plans to reduce the total number of stops by 16%, removing around 196 while adding 88 and relocating 54. The transit system has almost 770 stops along 19 routes, serving the cities of Kalamazoo, Portage, and Parchment, and the townships of Comstock, Kalamazoo, Ashtabula, and Texas Township. As new stops were added to the system over time, it reduced efficiency and speed of service, said Sean McBride, executive director of the Central County Transportation Authority. Recommendations in a 66-page report will guide changes during the next 5 years. Overall, the undertaking is expected to cost approximately $921,000. Now, here's the rub here. There is a concern that there may be an impact on some of our more vulnerable communities. An analysis to determine the impact of recommended changes on specific populations was required by the Federal Transit Administration. The assessment found no disproportionate impact on areas with high concentrations of seniors, poverty, folks in poverty, minorities, people with disabilities, and households with no motor vehicles. No stops are recommended for removal in areas with high concentrations of seniors and people with disabilities. Those areas will actually gain 2 stops. Bus stops will drop by around 10% in areas with high concentrations of minority and low-income residents. 2 out of the 5 stops are in those areas, which will remain the same if changes are implemented. Of the 88 new stops recommended, around a third are being added in poorer areas. So, for those of you who are more curious about kind of the nuance of this story and how this might affect your own bus travel, go ahead and go to the MLive website. The article is titled Nearly 200 Kalamazoo Metro Bus Stops to Close, 90 Added Under Plan. Honestly, I haven't heard a whole lot of commentary from the community about this. It does sound like they are being fairly even-handed with how they are restructuring the bus routes. But, of course, we will certainly have to wait and see. And I know as I speak, there are definitely people poring over these bus stop changes to see if it is actually going to have any sort of unfair impact on any of our marginalized folks. Hold on just a moment. I do believe that is my co-host, rapping at the chamber door. I will be right back. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program. Now joined by one of my very insightful and brilliant co-hosts. Say hello, Lawrence.
Yo, what up, what up, what up?
So, you came in, we're talking about, as we know, I started talking about, we're going to spend a lot of the show today on some candidate interviews and talking about the very spooky rise of fascism pretty much all over the damn place. But, let's not get lost in the shuffle. There is a very important election next week.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the bus routes and the privatization of our U.S. Postal Service, and also how we deal with all this crazy fascism that's been happening this week. They are all tied to what we do with our vote coming up the day before my birthday.
Yep, and I would like to throw kind of one thing out there, because there's a lot of different constituencies that listen to this program, from very, very far left to more kind of democratic socialists, and I don't know, maybe like a few centrist liberals listen to the program just to get angry. But
you definitely gonna get angry on this show.
Oh yeah. It is very important to vote in this upcoming midterm, not only because of some very important state-based ballot initiatives that we got coming up, but if you've been online, you might see the debates between some of your hard left and anarchist friends who the sentiment is voting doesn't really do anything, and here's where I stand, and I'm fairly radical. I'm a member of the USA Socialist Party. That being said, So when I went and saw Angela Davis, and I won't forget this, Charlene Carruthers, they were talking about the state of politics, and there were two things, two quotes that really stuck with me. One is, here's the problem with the two-party system in America. The Democrats won't do anything for me, and the Republicans want to do things to me. And the other quote Charlene said so eloquently is, don't think of electoral politics as your North Star. By most analysis of that leftists could give, you can make the argument that this system is just beyond reform. However, even if you do think that, if that's kind of where you're at, voting does play an important role in harm reduction. Let's be clear. Most of the parties are controlled by corporations. This is true. But you've seen an insurgency in the opposition party, the Republicans, of downright fascists, or at least this condoning of outright fascist groups and figures within their party. Like that Gavin McInnes story we covered a couple weeks ago with the Proud Boys, that happened at a Republican Party event.
Yeah. So, here's the thing. Like, I know people, we get into this argument of the lesser of two evils, forgetting the fact that just because one is less evil, that means it's going to be just as difficult fighting back against the garbage with someone who does not agree with you at all versus someone who agrees with you halfway. And it's easier to hold those people accountable, even though some may poo-poo the idea of it. The litmus test is, in my opinion, corruption. Are you taking corporate PAC money, super PAC money? Are you for Medicare for all? Are you for the legalization, taxation of marijuana, especially here in Michigan, which will be $1 billion industry to our state? Are you for or are you against this jerry-rigging or gerrymandering that's going on in our country, in our district? Are you for educating the future of America by having free college and tuition so people are not burdened by student loan debt? These are all things that are up on the ballot this year, that are issues that we have strong opinions on. Gun control, women's choice. We have LGBT issues. All these things are on the ballot this year, and these are all things that we need to fight for. And it's not just casting your vote and saying, okay, I cast my vote, I'm done. No, you need to hold the people who you vote in accountable.
Yep.
You have to call them. You have to be on their ass. You have to make sure that they are about that life. If they're not about that life and they're not going to do what we are asking, which is what the overwhelming majority of the Americans are asking for, then they need to either do their job, which is represent us, or we will fire them and get someone else to do it for them. Do our bidding for us, instead of the multinational corporations that pay most of our politicians.
Yeah, and just to kind of bounce off something you said, I can't emphasize the importance of enough that stay political after election day. And the most important political stuff that you can do is organizing inside of your own community, be it with some sort of anti-racist, anti-capitalist, anti-fascist group, because this is a long struggle. And even if the quote-unquote blue wave goes as spectacularly as a lot of Democrats want it to, that is merely going to be just like a finger in the dam, more or less. Because as we've seen, the forces of the billionaire class and fascism, they are coming. Like, you talk about blue wave. This is a tidal wave. It's a tsunami. It's in our direction. We've already been dealing with it. So, again, yeah, go vote. And for most people, it takes 10 minutes, maybe half an hour. Of course, if there's some seedy voter suppression stuff going on in your district, that might be a completely different story. But it doesn't take that much of your time, and wherever your principles lie at, it's important to participate, especially with the ballot proposals that we got on this November election, and I think we'd really like to highlight those for a second, because they would they're some of the most substantial and potentially impactful ballot resolutions I've seen on the Michigan ballot in a very long time. So we're talking about Proposal 1. That's of course the legalization of marijuana. Now we've talked about the nuance of this on the show before a little bit, about how does this intersect with criminal justice, and also how a lot of big agricultural businesses and Michigan plutocrats are kind of setting this up ahead of time to benefit the wealthy business class. However, like you said, Lawrence, there's a couple things that are just undeniably good about this, and one is getting that tax revenue, and good Lord, our state needs it. And of course, decriminalization is fundamentally important, because as much as we still need to deal with the legacy of the war on drugs, stopping it now is going to do a tremendous service to people all over our state who are unfairly, unjustly targeted for smoking some green herb. For all you Resident Evil fans out there.
I mean, man. Okay, so wait. Let's break it down. Let's break down the facts of what's going on in our country and what we should be looking at. We have Fred Upton, who's trying to take away health care from people in our area. Mm-hmm. We have these ballot initiatives. One of them is about something that you just got done talking about, which is the legalization, regulation, and decriminalization of marijuana. If you are a Republican, you should be for this, because the government arresting someone for trying to tweak their consciousness is no different from the government arresting you over the beer you're drinking right now. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's the same principle, and we've seen how prohibition works since the war on drugs, since Nixon. Let me remind everybody, since the start of the war on drugs till today, we've spent $1 trillion on the war on drugs. What has that given us, besides people dying of opioids across this country, the Mexican cartels and other cartels getting stronger because of our prohibition on marijuana? We have locked up brown and black and poor and disenfranchised people all over the country for nonviolent drug offenses. And the people who are in power, our last 5 presidents, have all smoked the same drug that is locking up millions of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, I mean, it's important to note, too, it's like said, who benefits from, that's a huge prison labor force that is at stake for a lot of multinational corporations. And it's interesting to me to see who was actually in opposition to Prop 1 here in the state of Michigan. It's primarily been a lot of law enforcement agencies, and part of me has to wonder, it's are they worried they're not gonna make their quotas now because
no.
Legal? But
so I mean, yeah, that is funny. But I mean, okay, so that's Proposal 1. Proposal 2 has to deal with gerrymandering. Mm-hmm. Proposal 2 has to deal with gerrymandering and the rewriting of the districts, and who's going to be rewriting the districts to make them more fair and more democratic. It is something that I advise everyone to look into. Just to give a quick little synopsis.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Language is hard today. A quick little synopsis of it. It's basically allowing more transparency with people who are going to be writing the districts, and writing how the districts are shaped, so that you have more people, so that the politician is not writing or drawing a map, in other words, choosing the voters. It's more transparent in the way that we are going to be voting for the person that's in the district. So it's giving power back to the people.
Yeah, and one of the important things about that, just to kind of talk about the nuts and bolts of it, is one of the things that makes it really important is so the way it basically functions now is every 10 years, depending on the census, the party in power, whichever political party in power, whether it's the Republicans or the Democrats, get discretion to redraw those district lines. So you end up with situations where you actually have more Democrats voting than Republicans, but you still end up with Republican leadership, or vice versa, just because of the way that they're districted. And like what it proposes is instead of just ceding that responsibility to whichever party's in power, you'll have like an independent commission.
You have a commission of 13 people, registered voters, randomly selected by the Secretary of State, for each who self-identifies as affiliated with the two major parties, which I have a problem with, and 5 who are self-identified as unofficially members of political parties. So you can have 4 people. So you have 4 people who are identified as Democrat and Republican, and you have 5 people who are looked at as independents, or everything else in between. Bipartisan official holders and candidates, their employees. Hold on 1 second.
Just a quick shot while you're looking that up. So if you want to hear more about this, we actually had a rep from Voters Not Politicians. They're the big group that went out and got all the ballot signatures to make this happen. And you can look that up on our YouTube page, Hoodrat Strategist Radio Program, and that is our episode from September 26th.
You can also have the League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters also have a lot of information about the candidates, the proposals, what people's records are. They are a good source of information so that you can stay informed. We understand that most people are not political junkies like us. Most people are not are in the meat of it like we are. So please take some time out of your busy schedule to do the research and know what you're voting for and know why you're voting for.
Yeah, and one last thing is, Proposal 3, which really hasn't gotten as much attention as the other two, but I did just want to kind of summarize what that's all about. It's about kind of voter access. Here's a few things that it would do. Proposal 3, it would automatically register people to vote when applying, updating, or renewing a driver's license or state ID. Simultaneously register people to vote with proof of residency and obtain a ballot during the 2-week period prior to election, which basically means and you would also be able to obtain an absentee ballot without providing a reason. So it would make it much easier. Right now, to get an absentee ballot, you basically have to fill out a form and explain why you can't show up to the polls. If this passes, it'll be much easier to do that, which again helps voter turnout. So if you sign up for an absentee ballot, it just shows up to your door, you fill it out, and you mail it back in. It'll make it state law again, because it used to be like this, that you can cast a straight ticket vote for all candidates of a political party when voting in a partisan general election. And there's kind of two minds about this. Obviously, neither me nor Lawrence are big fans of the two-party system. However, it does help people, particularly a very marginalized population that really isn't thought of a lot when voting. We're talking about people who with dyslexia, or people who are just illiterate to begin with, because what it'll do is it'll put like the party symbols up there on the ballot, so you can go ahead and just check that off, and then boom, you're done. So I think while at the same time I'm not a fan of people just voting in blind, just voting for candidates and proposals without doing the research. But it does help people with a franchise who are challenged in that way.
And also, if you want to be honest, I'm more for ranked choice voting, but that's me personally. I'm also for same day registration voting. I'm also for automatic for someone to turn 18, they're automatically registered to vote. We're for more people voting. We're for more people being involved and more people being acclimated into our system of democracy. We need more voices, and we want people to let their voices be heard. And that proposal, in my opinion, it doesn't go far enough, but it is a good start. You know what I'm saying? It's a very good start. It doesn't go far enough, but it is a very good start, and we always need to have progress moving forward. So my ideal thing would be Michigan does have same day voters registration, I think. So not open primary like that, like the primary that we have. I would like ranked choice voting. I would like to have if my system would have voting election day being a holiday and people getting the days off, so we can do that. If we could do that statewide, that would be good, so people wouldn't have an excuse for them going to work or being at work or something like that they could have the day off to go and vote. That would be the next step after this to propose. And also Uber and Lyft we've talked about Uber and Lyft before on the show, but they will drive you to the polls if you don't have a way to get there.
That is true,
and that does help, especially since in Georgia they were kicking people off the buses because they were trying to go vote early.
Oh, I heard that story.
We need to talk about that. We need to talk about a couple different stories that's going on when it comes to voter suppression in the United States. But talk about Michigan. Just to finish up with Michigan, not just in our area, but you got Debbie Stabenow versus John James. You got you have Gretchen Whitmore versus the knuckle dragger on the other side. I forgot his name. But
Bill Shoddy. Actually, I can't say his nickname on here.
Dog, look, here's the thing. He lost me. See, they had some debates, and I watched the debates, and he lost me when it came to education, man. And when it came to we're not gonna agree on guns.
Yeah,
we're just not gonna agree on guns. I'm cool with that. I'm fine with that. You can have that. That ain't even what I'm mad at. Bill Schuette doesn't agree with debt-free school. Like, he doesn't agree with giving free college and tuition to students, forgetting the fact that most students have higher student loan debt than their parents' mortgage debt. Like that. That's the thing that bothers me the most. You want to put money and you want to put public money, so our tax dollars, into charter schools and private schools. You don't want to put that money into public schools, which is what a majority of students in Michigan go to. So you don't want to fund the schools that need more of the money. You don't want to reinvest into the teachers and the staff of the school to make sure that they are well equipped to teach said students. You're overfilling the classes with because there's not enough diversity and or room in said schools, so the classes are overfilled, so teachers are not being able to give the necessary help to said students that they may need. And then you're going to cut funding to education. That's his plan. His plan is to cut funding to the schools who need it the most. I'm sitting here like, when has that ever worked? When has that ever worked? Like, dog. Like,
I mean, it works if your goal is to destroy public education and make it so private is like the only option for people.
Oh my God, Bill Schuette. Like, dog, don't even like Gretchen like that. Like, no, I'm gonna keep it real. I don't even like Gretchen like that. But I'm just sitting here like, yeah, I'm now more enthused to vote for her than anybody else, because her plan, like, even Gretchen doesn't even go far enough with a majority of the plans that she talks about.
Well,
but
I know
they're not.
We're gonna have Jennifer Kurland on the show earlier.
Yeah,
you could probably pick her brain about that.
Dog, she doesn't. Like, but the thing is that she's better than the knuckle dragger that she's going against.
That's true.
And but okay, so that's them. I'm not sold on Matt Longjohn being a progressive. I know that you are. We've had conversations about it.
I never said that I think he's necessarily progressive, but I would give him this. He's kind of part of this. I mean, there's different tiers. I'd say he's more of like he is more in the center on a lot of his policies. I will give him the fact he hasn't taken any corporate PAC money. That's kind of my litmus test for a lot of candidates.
That's also my litmus test too.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So the fact that he doesn't take corporate PAC money or super PAC money is a good thing, but at the same time, dog, what I wanted to see. I wanted to see Matt attack Fred Upton's corruption a lot more.
Yeah, he's been far too polite about it. Like, he's made like little allusions to it.
He's been very nice, and Fred Upton has voted against the climate. He's voted against clean water. Mm-hmm. Fred Upton's voted. He's a climate change denier. He's voted so that oil companies and fossil fuel companies and other polluters can get away with polluting in our community and polluting in our drinking water. The dude is voting to take away health care from hundreds of thousands of people in Michigan. Let me just remind everybody here. Before President Trump did his mandates or his executive orders, we had 20 million people that were uninsured. Now it's gone up. We had 20 million people that were uninsured. Then it was it was 28 million. We had 28 million people that was uninsured. After the executive orders, it's gone up to 31 million people that are uninsured. Mm-hmm. And Fred Upton's plan to make sure that healthcare is affordable for everybody is to take away health insurance from everybody.
Oh yeah, and the big thing is Trump is like, oh well, I put a provision in the bill to throw a few billion towards people with disabilities. Which, when you look at it from like the national perspective, the money he talked about putting in was the equivalent of throwing some nickels in a bucket. You know?
So just to recap, he's a climate change denier where climate scientists have said that we have 12 years to get our stuff together or extinction will be inevitable. But he does not believe the climate scientists. He's trying to take away health care from millions of from people in our district. This is our representative. He's not for free college and tuition. He's not for raising the minimum wage. He's not for infrastructure spending. What he is for is cutting taxes for millionaires and billionaires.
Yep.
And we have 6 billionaires that run Kalamazoo. So that's what he is for.
And the main problem here is because y'all might have a lot of parents and aunts and uncles who voted for him in the past, and it's like he does that whole thing where he's very inoffensive. He's polite. Occasionally he will be pragmatic and be like, oh, I don't agree with Trump on this, or oh, let's defend this marginalized person in our community. But he only does that to the extent that it kind of provides him cover for being a complete corporate tool.
He agrees with ICE.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Fred Upton agrees with ICE. He is not. He comes off like he is a moderate Republican. He's not a moderate Republican. He's a troglodyte like everybody else. He votes with Trump over 90% of the times. 90% of the times, you vote with the man. You vote with a man who you say that you don't agree with his candor and the way that he says things. 90% of the times, if this was a Match.com profile, they would be dating right now. No, dog. Get out of here with this garbage. Fred Upton has not represented this district any way, shape, or form, and you should not be voting for him. Not in any way, shape, or form.
And I would encourage y'all, if you want to find out more about his opponent, Matt Longjohn, we interviewed him back on May 16th. Check it out on our YouTube page. Again, like I said,
he is for Medicare for all.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he says that he would expand it and do more things to it. But he said that if Bernie Sanders' bill did come to his desk, which Bernie Sanders has been adding to it, so it includes dental and
psychiatric care,
and also eye care. But Matt did say that if that bill was put in front of him, he would sign it, and he does support Medicare for all. So that is one thing.
Yeah, and I can attest to the fact that he's at least responsive enough. He can be pushed. He can be pushed by his constituents, and two good examples of that are he did come out and say we need to abolish ICE. And granted, he said we should reconstitute it somehow. Probably less with the separating families and putting them in camps.
Forgetting the fact. Let's also remember, ICE was created after 2001, after 9/11, as a response to the Patriot Act and. Border Patrol and our Border Patrol already does the job that ICE is doing. ICE is just more of a hammer where we have a bunch of hammers.
Yeah. And then he also did say he would want to audit the Pentagon and tighten up our military budget. But with that, let's go to a break. And we come back. Well, we got a lot more to talk about. Y'all listening?
Speaking about the military budget, are we gonna talk about the story about the military spending a couple $100,000 on a cup of coffee?
Yeah.
We talk about that story?
Oh man.
My God.
Yeah. All right, y'all listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
You're listening to WIBR FM, and this is your boy, Kill Mitchell. Yeah, that's right, the Good Burger guy, the orange soda guy. I do. Ooh. New movie coming out, WIBR FM. Y'all got to check it out. It's Kill.
WIDR would like to remind you to please drive safely. Drunk driving not only puts your life in danger, but the lives of others as well. If you find yourself stranded somewhere, consider calling Drive Safe Kalamazoo, phoning a friend, or having an Uber pick you up. Thank you for listening.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are back. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. So we're about to talk about government waste, but before we do that, just one last thing we forgot to talk about. Probably the most exciting candidate on the Democratic side that's running right now is Dana Nessel. At the convention, that was pretty much like that was the biggest kind of proxy battle between like the establishmentarian Michigan Democratic Party and the Progressives. Progressives won that one out, but she's really bold and for lack of a better word, ballsy, talking about she's going to sue Enbridge on day one to get the pipeline shut down. She's very strong about like going after corporations.
She's anti-corruption, man, and that's the thing. You gotta have people who are anti-corruption, and she seems like, and she has to talk, and her record shows that she is about that life. So, she gave me a lot of hope, especially in Michigan. I'm like, I mess with her.
And please ignore, like, I've been seeing so many like negative attack ads about her. And context matters. A lot of they're basically saying like, oh, she was she defended a bunch of criminals and da 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 da, and it goes back to her her time like literally like doing her job, and of course it's a lot of like kind of cultural dog whistling. It's like, oh, she was involved in defending a strip club. Oh, no.
The same people who defended that was throwing shade at her are the same people who did not want to convict Rick Snyder for poisoning an entire city.
Yeah,
like let's keep that in context, folks. That the people who are throwing shade at this young progressive is the same people who wasn't about that life when 13 people and hundreds of thousands of people were poisoned in Flint. These are the same people who didn't want any smoke with the pipeline that poisoned us near Michigan. That means poisoned us near Kalamazoo when the Kalamazoo oil spill happened. They didn't want any smoke with that corporation that spilled oil in our river. So nah, dog, come on, man, get out of here with that garbage. Like, there is a person who's about that life. And it's the person that they're trying to smear.
Yeah. So yeah, that's another really important reason to get out there if and you can vote. And she's been endorsed by a lot of just about every like progressive group in Michigan. So let's move on to another story. We were just talking about military waste, and I know you were, man. Me and you were like kind of chuckling about this. During the break,
we laugh because we're not trying to cry, and that's most of the main reason. But what kind of minerals and ecstasy and other stuff was in this drink to make it cost this much? Business Insiders talks about this story. The U.S. Air Force still can't explain why it spent $1,280 on a cup of coffee. Cup of coffee, a truckload of coffee.
Wait, was it like a smart coffee mug?
No, like right. This wasn't a missile guided coffee. This was a cup, a mug. You know that mug that's in your hand right now while you listening to this radio station? They spent $1,280 on one cup of coffee. That ain't the only thing that was in this story. But
it goes to show, like, when we talk about like the waste of the military budget, Republicans will try to smear it as like, oh, you're trying to take away like body armor from the troops and blah blah blah. Like, no, we're pointing out the fact that like, this is endemic. It's kind of a funny headline. It's like, oh my God, they spent that much on a cup of coffee, but like the Pentagon and the military in general will just mark up these items as being like just ridiculously expensive. Where does that money go? Well, that's a really good question, but just the extent to which our tax dollars are mismanaged by the military-industrial complex cannot be overstated. You know, not only do we got coffee cups, but we've got experimental jet fighters that cost billions, trillions of dollars that never get off the ground.
Wait.
Yeah,
hold on. I just need to read this quote from Business Insider. Over the past 3 years, the Air Force has spent over $300,000 on these hot coffees. They call it the U.S. Air Force is using hot coffee metal cups, similar in size to a French press, that costs $1,280 per cup. So over the last 3 years, the U.S. Air Force have spent over $300,000 on these hot coffees.
man, I'll tell you what, I ain't going to a coffee shop anytime soon. It's too rich for my blood.
Dog. Okay. Here's the thing. I'm gonna keep on reading a little bit more from this article, but I just wanna say, they know that you can go to Starbucks and get coffee for like $5.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you get the same French press that they got in a reusable container. About $5.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what I'm saying. That's what I was asking. I'm like, dog, are they like crushing diamonds?
Yeah.
Is it like gold? Is it like gold and diamond and platinum lace coffee?
Really.
Like, are these like missile guided coffee?
So I think now, do you want to move on to another maybe like our fascism roundup?
Oh my god!
Oh man, there's a lot to talk about with that. But I think I want to start because one of the things that there were two big stories last week that got kind of swept under, and one was this interview with what's her name, Dana Loesch, the NRA woman.
So Dana Loesch has said some very horrible things in the past, and Dana Loesch has been a terrible human being most of the time after mass shootings. She has said repugnant and horrible things. Recently, she made a statement after one of the latest mass shootings and things, and she was talking about politics. She said that people who care about the Second Amendment should carry their guns to the polling stations. They should carry their weapons to the polling stations as a way to show solidarity with the Second Amendment. That was now a few days after she's like, this was around the same time that a white supremacist nut job killed 2 black people in a Kroger's right before he tried to go into a church and murder more black people, but he was unsuccessful in going inside the church. You had the right winger who was mailing bombs to prominent Democrats and people who have criticized Donald Trump. And then you had the largest massacre of Jewish people that happened later that week. Now, and the weapon that the young man that this crazy nut job had was an AR-15 that he used to slaughter innocent people at a synagogue. The thing that pissed me off most about her tone deafness when it came to, I want people to have solidarity with people who with the Second Amendment. You can do that without carrying your gun to a polling station.
Yeah.
And the other thing that pissed me off is that you had a 96-year-old woman that survived. She survived Hitler. She survived the Nazi regime, but she couldn't survive a Saturday in Pittsburgh.
She survived Hitler's Germany, but she could not survive Trump's America. That's
yeah. She couldn't survive a Saturday in Pittsburgh. Like that's the thing that I don't think people were understanding with the severity of the issues that we have today. Let me give you some more context about what I'm talking about. The Anti-Defamation League did a study that was backed by the National Consortium of Study on Terrorists and Response to Terrorism, and also the Government Accountability Office. And also Homeland Security. They did a study from 2008 to 2017, and they showed that the ADL, Anti-Defamation League, made a claim that over 74 of murders by extremists during the reference time period were committed by right-wing extremists. 74%. The other 23% was done by Muslim extremists in America, and everyone else, left-wingers, people of color, everyone else that would be put in as other, is in that 3%.
Yeah. I mean,
that's America. That's the America that we're living in.
Yeah.
That's 2008 to 2017.
So yeah, I think two takeaways. It's like, keep in mind this didn't all just suddenly pop up. This is well, I mean, America has a long and storied history of white supremacy, but the extent to which fascism is on the rise is something that I don't think a lot of people have really even wrapped their head around. And it's not even just here. You're talking about these lone wolves who send out pipe bombs. There was that couple that got killed at the Kroger's store. The white guy basically he went there. First, he tried to go to a black church and basically pull a
he tried to pull a Dylan Roof. There was a church service that was there an hour before he showed up, and the doors of the church was open. It was an hour before he showed up. He showed up an hour later. The church was locked. There was only 10 people in there. There was over 100 people there the hour before he got there. There was only 10 people there, and they were locking up because they were cleaning up, and they saw him trying to get into the church, and he didn't. And after being frustrated trying to get into the doors of the church after the church was locked up, that's when he went to the Kroger's. Like, it's not just that. That's not the only other story that's not the only other story of suspected terrorism that's happened this week. I saw on my timeline earlier, and I need to confirm this, but a Ferguson activist, the mother of a Ferguson activist, saw her son hung in the tree.
Yeah, the police are trying to say that it's a suicide.
No. So that's a real story.
Yeah, that is a real story.
Okay.
And
I didn't know if it was real or not.
And he's not the first one. There's been some other Ferguson activists who have died very mysteriously, quote unquote suicides, that really don't add up or make much sense. This one guy in particular. It's not very easy to lynch yourself, that's again, that is likely what happened, and you can tell like the police are really trying to like kind of cover it up and say, it was like I'm sorry, what was her name? Was it Sandra Bland who got killed in jail, and they said it was a suicide? And it just didn't pass the smell test for anyone. And it's similar to what's going on with these Ferguson activists. These young black activists, too outspoken for the police's liking, and all of a sudden they start dying mysteriously. And this has been going on for like the last year and a half or so.
Yeah. See, here's the thing that we talk about. It's one thing. it's something that we were talking about before. Me and you were talking about before we got on the show. It's the perception of violence. Now, if you look at crime rates and things of that nature, and this is what my right wing friends will always tell me, is that, well, black people commit more murders and robberies and all this other stuff in America. Is disproportionately more black people who are committing these crimes, forgetting the fact that 47% of most crimes, especially people who are locked up, cases are either thrown out or they're exonerated because they find out that no, either the person was set up or no, the person actually didn't do the crime. 47% of people that are in jail. A study showed last year. Cases get annulled because the person didn't do the crime. They got the wrong person, and then you have cases like Dylan Roof and these 3 other nut jobs that are looked at as one-offs. They're looked at as drops in the bucket, and it's like, no. The overarching theme of violence, hate crimes, and etc. that are done in this country are done against people who are oppressed, and it's usually people who are in that privilege, that circle of privilege, white males specifically. They're the ones doing the crimes, but they're not looked at as such.
No, they're not.
And that's the problem, man. And
even the couple that got killed in Kroger's, after the guy literally said whites don't shoot whites, the police there are not going so far as to call it a hate crime, even though it's like a textbook definition.
Okay. So those who do not know about the context of that story, after he got done killing 2 black people and he emptied the clip in both of them, he walked out of Kroger's and he was approached by a good Samaritan with a gun. He was talking to the Good Samaritan, and he told the Good Samaritan, "Hey, don't shoot me, man. Let me go. Whites don't kill whites." So, you know how Dana Loesch and the other NRA members like to say that a good guy with a gun stops a bad guy with a gun? Yeah, he stopped the bad guy so much that he let him go. He let him go. So if this nutcase had more guns, had more ammo, and the cops didn't get there in time, he could have kept shooting more black people that he saw.
Yeah.
So come on, dog. And it's people like Dana Loesch and others, and even our president. The response from our president when it came to the shooting in the synagogue, he said if they were to have weapons in the synagogue, it would have turned out a different way. Saying more guns will protect us when we are living in a country where 8 out of 10 people have a weapon. It's like saying more smoking will cure your lung cancer. Like, come on, bro. Can we stop with this dumb ass notion that the only way to keep us safe is if we have more guns in the hands of more civilians?
Yeah, and I did want to pivot and broaden out a little bit. So, we focus mostly on a lot of fascists here in America, white nationalists, but it's important to understand, particularly now that we're around election time, the encroachment of fascism is a global phenomenon. You got Orban over in Hungary. You have a far right-wing leader over in Poland. France almost had one elected, and very recently, last week, Jair Bolsonaro was elected president of Brazil. And, I'm just going to, for those of you who might not understand just how awful this is a guy he's spoken openly about dismantling the Congress of Brazil. He's praised dictators. He's criticized people like Pinochet for not killing enough people. He said, I would be incapable of, loving a gay son, and has basically said, LGBTQ people don't belong in society. Brazil is, of course, home to 2/3 of the Amazon rainforest, and he has literally said, if I get elected, as far as I'm concerned, every citizen, you will not have a centimeter demarcated for indigenous reserves or indigenous people. So he's basically talking just outright genocide.
F the people who who's actually from Brazil.
Yeah. And probably the creepiest part of this story, more than anything else, is that a lot of center-right mainstream media and even just more centrist media have kind of looked at Bolsonaro with rose-tinted glasses. Outlets like CNN, MSNBC, they say like, oh, it's like Trump got elected in Brazil. This guy is way worse than Trump.
He's actually more like the dude he's more like the guy, Duterte.
Duterte, yeah.
Mm-hmm. He's more like him. He's more like the dude who says, "Hey, if you see drug lords, shoot them in the streets."
Yeah,
he's more along those lines. The dude is a nutcase, man.
And a week before the election, people in his party were going into universities, and we're literally tearing down anti-fascist posters, purging leftist books, harassing student organizers. So they got the jump on, but this guy is like a capital F dictionary definition fascist who just got elected in Brazil. And we talked a couple weeks ago about some of the economic factors that are leading to a lot of these right-wing demagogues to get elected. But let's not forget either that what's really gross. This is a guy who, again, is openly advocating genocide. He's talking about privatizing the Amazon rainforest, which I've actually seen a lot of articles in recent days from climate scientists saying, if he does what he's planning to do, he could rip out the lungs of our planet, because the Amazon rainforest takes in more CO2 than just about any other concentrated woodland on the planet. If he does what he's planning to do, he could exacerbate climate change in an absolutely fatal fashion. Yet, at the same time, you have magazines like the Wall Street Journal who are already outright endorsing him. I've seen articles from business periodicals in Canada talking about he'd be really good for Canadian business. It's capitalists prefer fascists to even moderate reformers, and I think we've talked about the historical context of this on the show before, but just seeing it in real time is just so disturbing.
Yeah, the Washington Post endorsed this nut job. Think about that. Our establishment press, some people in our establishment press endorsed this nut job, who would help exacerbate the problem of climate change, who has said, and I am quoting, that he's in favor of dictatorships. This person who does not accept the humanity of indigenous people, of people who are in the LGBT community. This man is not fit to be in that office. And we don't talk about the reason why enough, the why enough. When your people are struggling, when wages are stagnant, when people feel like their economic mobility is being stifled, they need it out, and they're not being educated or told why this is the problem. They're not looking up to the people who own the capital. They're looking down at at the other people around them that's struggling, and they're being told to blame the others for their problems. That's how you have this rise of demagoguery and this rise of fascism. It's absolutely insane to think after we've had after World War II, after seeing what fascism and the ideals of said fascism by Nazis and Stalin and other regimes, that we have people who are in line with their ideologies, and we have to fight back. we have to fight back, and we have to tell the truth about not just our history, but we have to fight back against this type of ideology, because this type of ideology is literally destroying the planet. Andy had to step out for a second, so I'm gonna talk about another topic that we wanted to talk about for a hot second, and I do have to speak on this rise of anti-intellectualism. We see this all the time online. People think that their ignorance is just as valid as other people's research and development. You see this all the time with the neutrality bias of mainstream media, television. We have a problem with people who have studied or are experts in the field, and we want to rely more on our feelings and our way to confirm our already preconceived biasness. And I encourage everyone to be more open to information, to research and accept the fact that you might be challenged on certain ideas and stuff. It's a very upsetting notion in our world that people feel like when their ideas or things are being harmed, or that they are stuck in their own bubble, and we get stuck in our own bubble too. So I encourage everyone to step outside of your bubble and also correct the record and correct the notion with people when they are spewing ignorance. Like let's make sure we have those conversations. Not every conversation needs to be shut down just because someone's being stupid. Now, yes, some people may be too far gone and stuck in their own ways, but we definitely need to have more of those conversations so that we can fight things like the what's going on in Brazil and also what's going on here in America.
Yep, totally agree.
Andy has a return.
Yeah, thanks for holding it down, Lawrence. I had to go let our very special guest in.
Oh, snap.
Yep. So
we're gonna take a break because it's like 6 something.
Yeah. Let's take a quick little break, and then when we come back, we actually have Jennifer Kurland in the studio, candidate for governor. So keep your dial locked. We'll be right back.
For those interested in
underground hip-hop,
here is a complete disc jockey show with all the modern pace of today's exciting radio.
Listen here on
Saturday night
from 7 to 10.
You can't go wrong.
There's one important element missing, however. That's you.
hip-hop epic show.
Saturday night.
I mean, DJs bring me young, play that real live show. The hip-hop epic show.
I know you're gonna do it.
Yo, I'm talking about
The hip-hop epic show. The DJ bring me young.
transmitting live.
Saturday night.
WIDR Kalamazoo.
Bouncy.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing...
Thank you.
All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are back. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. So like I said before the break, we are joined today by Jennifer Kurland, who is running for governor on the Green Party ticket. And I know, Lawrence, you said you got to bust out. So, usually we do like introductions, but if you have any burning questions.
Oh, no. Let her do her thing. I will dip out shortly after.
Okay. So, Jennifer, let's just ask real quick. So you are running for governor on the Green Party ticket. Just give us some kind of your general pitch. Like, what are, say, like the 3 issues that you are fighting most for, like, are the cornerstone of your campaign?
Awesome. So thanks so much for having me on. I really enjoy doing small local media. And so kind of my 3 biggest pieces. The headsets aren't working. No, all good. So kind of my 3 major points. Number 1 is fixing Flint. It's the canary in the coal mine for so many other issues around our state. But still today, the people of Flint do not have access to clean, safe drinking water. We know that the state is culpable. I actually spent 6 months and I researched and I created a documentary on the Flint water crisis. And so, the state is culpable. And so the state must fix what happened. It's really the fault of both Democrats and Republicans. And so therefore, that's why you're not seeing anything in Flint, because in order to, admit that the state is at fault, then you have to admit that it was the fault of both parties. And so they're just playing this partisan politics and protect the party above all else, while we have a city of 100,000 people that is still today being poisoned by their water. And so my other 2 major points is public education. I currently serve on my local school board, and I've been fighting for, our public schools. I was actually raised by a public school teacher, so that's a huge component for me, making sure that we have things like funding infrastructure and funding curriculum and professional development for our teachers, and that we're really actually looking at what we can do for our future with public education, rather than, we've had about 20 years worth of cuts, which is really 2 lost decades of kids in public education. And I'd say kind of my 3rd point, that's a major issue for me, is small business. So I worked in banking for over a decade, and I worked mainly with small business owners and, people just struggling throughout the recession to keep food on the table and keep their homes. And in order to really make sure that we as a state recover from the Great Recession, and that when another recession hits, that we have a strong economy, we need to have a strong small business base. So within my plan, I have some grants to help people who don't have the means to start a business, but have the plan to start a business, to get grants from the state to do so, as well as, of course, switching over to 100% clean, green, renewable energy, which is going to be able to put our tradespeople to work, building solar panels and wind farms, being innovative when it comes to hydroelectricity and utilizing the Great Lakes that we currently have. And then lastly, once we legalize marijuana, we're going to be able to start growing industrial hemp. And the businesses and industry that is going to come from industrial hemp and everything else that we can bring from that, it might be a new way of solving our roads, because you can turn industrial hemp into a concrete. You'll, of course, be able to get things like textiles and cosmetics and so many other products that are going to come from that. And Michigan is really unique, as per like other states that have the opportunity, once they've legalized recreational, that we have the space and we have the groundwater supply, which is what hemp really needs to flourish. And it's really going to help our small local farmers rather than big ag. And so it's a way that we can also transform our economy too. So there's quite a few different points, and everything's really all interconnected too.
Okay, great. And, just a couple of points that just made me want to kind of popcorn off of. So, talking about the Flint water crisis, we, I believe Miss Michigan actually said, state with America's largest amount of clean drinking water, but none for its residents.
Yes.
Right here in Kalamazoo, we were recently dealing with a PFAS contamination issue in parchment. We have, of course, had the Enbridge oil spill over in this side of the state several years ago. So fundamentally,
and it was found in your municipal water supply too.
That's true. Yeah. What do you think is like the source of this issue? how do we like deal with it effectively? Both as like, you know, trying to engage with politics, but also just as like, you know, the grassroots activists that we all are.
Yeah, so I worked for Clean Water Action for 3 years, and I did door-to-door canvassing around our state. And one of the things that we worked on when I worked there was to start charging fees for pollution permits, because before that, our state did not charge any fees, and you could just apply for a permit and get it and pollute. And so the initial fee that we got, which is 15, 20 years ago now, was just a minimal fee, which was supposed to pay really just for the compliance piece to make sure that there was monitoring. And I'm sure that fee hasn't changed. And right now, permits will just be given out. As long as you fit the parameters, you get the permit. There's no accountability. There's no actual true cost of doing business, right? Especially when you think about Kalamazoo River is going to be, it's essentially destroyed for a century because we still have crude oil on the bottom of the Kalamazoo River. And the PFA contamination issue is a result of decades of the state just not caring about these contaminants. And it is a larger issue around our state. There's PFAS issues in northern Michigan, on my side of the state in the St. Clair River. You have, this growing issue around Ann Arbor. Of course, here in Kalamazoo, it is affecting currently about a third of our state. About a third of the counties in our state have some kind of PFA contamination. And we know that that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg, right? Anytime you have that kind of contamination that's so widespread, it's everywhere. And it's also in the Flint River because it's in the fish advisories for the Flint River. So when you look at what has been reported and then what's actually out there, it's also partially an issue of like media, right? Because the media, currently does not do their due diligence when it comes to any of these issues. And it's up to us as residents and citizens to really find out what these problems are and where they are. So I think part of it is, the only way to really force businesses to change their method of doing business is to cost it out, right? To make it too expensive for them to do business. And so when you talk about how do we stop this pollution in our state and how do we hold businesses accountable, well, all right, that's part of the permit. You have to pay for the monitoring. You have to pay for potential cleanup. You have to pay the cost of the health care for the people that you're making sick from your chemicals. You have to release exactly everything that you're currently using and dumping, and pay for those costs. And then on top of that, what the state really needs to do is two other things. Number one, the state needs to give the DEQ/DNR, which I think we need to remerge those two departments, needs to give them the ability to deny permits because currently they don't have that ability to deny a permit. And number two, the state needs to require these businesses to hold insurance that is going to cover cleanup costs. Because right now it all falls on us as taxpayers. Like the Kalamazoo River spill, that wasn't paid for by Enbridge for any kind of cleanup. It was paid for by us.
So, I just wanted, like, one of the things you brought up. So, like, I've done a few things with a couple of activist groups, like Michigan Unite, for instance, where we marched on the DEQ talking about sacrifice zones and stuff. But you said they literally don't have the ability to deny permits?
Correct.
Wow, that's messed up.
If a business, we saw it with the Nestle thing, right? The expansion of their permit. It was like 80,000 to 7, right? I'm slightly exaggerating, but not by much in terms of public comment about denying that permit, yet the DEQ gave out that permit. And so I've actually spoken, I've gone to, a bunch of different hearings when it comes to water issues and things like that. And I've spoken to DEQ employees. And that's one of the things that they've said, that their hands are tied, that they really, in many cases, want to be able to deny some of these permits. I'm talking about like the employees, not the people like, Heidi Grether at the top. I'm talking about just your average, employees that really, truly are in that industry to be helpful and to protect public health. But their hands are tied. And so how do you untie them? You allow them to deny permits based on public comment. And then there's an accountability piece on top of that too.
Well, speaking of accountability, I want to know how much money does Enbridge and a couple of these other companies pay said politicians that you're running against to not do their job? Yeah. And I also want to know, to tie into that, one of the big issues that me and Andy talk about all the time is money in politics. So I wanted to ask you about your stance on money in politics, and are you taking corporate PAC money and super PAC money?
Sure. So there's really no way to find out exactly how much money Enbridge is pumping into, really, I would say both corporate candidates, because when you talk about super PACs do not have to disclose where their money is coming from. And so there's no way to really trace that dark money without doing some kind of like full audit of Enbridge. And even then, I mean, some of it's going to be coming from their CEOs and things like that. So it's really difficult to find out exactly who is funding who. What you can do is realize it based on their policies, right? Now, personally, I don't take any PAC money, super PAC money, corporate money, anything of the sort. Whoa. But on top of that, the Green Party does not take corporate money, PAC money, super PAC money. Whoa. So as a party, that I think is really freeing. It allows me to kind of speak about whatever I want to speak about, because I'm really only beholden to the people. But then on top of that, even when you have people that are like, progressive Democrats, quote unquote, they're still beholden to the party and the party's donors. So no matter how they run when it comes to a primary, if they make it past a primary, they're now beholden to the party and the party's donors. And if they're not, the party would rather lose that seat than allow someone to take a seat, without having that influence. And on top of that, even if somehow that were to be the case and they would make it in, what happens then is that the party then shackles their candidates and shackles their politicians. Because if you don't vote the right way, this is for Republicans and Democrats both, the party will do things like say, all right, well, you're cut off from being able to email your constituents for a few months.
It's interesting you bring that up because we were talking a little bit about Dana Nessel earlier. And one of the interesting things I've seen from her is the Republicans have just been dogpiling her with negative attack ads. And in previous races, I've seen ads for the Secretary of State candidate, but the Democratic Party of Michigan doesn't seem to be giving her campaign any real resources. And it seems to be because she has a very hard anti-corporate stance.
She has a very hard anti-corruption stance, and that's the thing that I think about a lot. So, a question that I would like to ask is, would you be okay, or would you support a constitutional amendment to get money out of politics?
Absolutely. So I actually was working for a little while with Wolfpack, if you're familiar with who Wolfpack is. I actually did work with them for a little bit. I cut some turf actually on this side of the street when they were doing some canvassing over here. But yeah, absolutely. I support it either as a state call for a convention, because of course that's the reason why Wolfpack is going the route that they are.
I also support Wolfpack as well. Just to be clear, I also support Wolfpack as well. So yeah.
It's one way or another, right? But the only way to overturn a Supreme Court decision is to do a constitutional amendment. So we can do some things within our state, right? The governor does have the power to make some changes when it comes to that kind of corporate money in politics. But it's really this larger issue, right, across our country. And that, absolutely, we need a constitutional amendment. And it's been really far too long since we've had any kind of constitutional convention or an amendment. It's really the last was the 70s?
Yeah.
Sometime in the 70s.
We need, we need one, and we definitely, I definitely will support. That's one of my litmus tests for me to vote for them, is if they would support something like Wolfpack. So the other thing that I'm super passionate about, which you do have on here, you talk about the legalization of marijuana. You should know this, that a lot of people who look like me are put in jail for non-violent drug offenses. Since you want to legalize marijuana, where is your stance on the reallocation of money going back to those communities that were devastated by things like the war on crime?
So, that's actually, there's a couple things within that. So, number one, I've already pledged that I will do pardons and commutations for anyone that has possession charges. I think that we really need to completely change and reform our entire prison and policing system. When we look at things like community policing, number one is extremely important. Citizen review boards across the state for any time there's instances of police brutality. Anytime you have the killing of a civilian, the AG's office, I think, should be automatically involved instantly to review those cases, as well as if there is a local citizen review board, that they go hand in hand. And then when you look at things like, I live in Wayne County. So in Wayne County, it's like 40% of the people who are currently incarcerated in the county are incarcerated because they can't afford bail.
Yeah.
So that's, also, a larger issue on top of that. We need to end the cash bail system. But when you look at, how communities have been affected, and I live in Redford, and I live right across the street from Detroit. So my neighbors across the street from me get different services than I do, simply because of the city that we live in, even though we live on the same street. So I do believe in, part of the problem, right, when you talk about communities not getting enough funding is also because of the Headley Amendment. And the Headley Amendment allows the state basically to take tax resources from Detroit and disperse it to other places around the state because of the equitable clause within there. So it really disproportionately affects our urban communities from being able to keep some of the state services that they really need and the state money that they really need tax-wise. But on top of that, I think that's really the key point within my small business plan, is especially for people that don't have capital. Those are the people that are going to get priority with these small business grants, because that's the only way to make sure that we have successful small businesses. And we need to make sure that that ownership is in areas where people don't have the capital.
Well, I agree with that, but I would also want to, there's two things.
Mm-hmm.
You have...
Are you talking more like reparations?
I personally am for reparations, but that's not what I'm talking about.
Okay.
I'm talking about for things like we saw in California and in Colorado, a majority of the funds that they had for marijuana went to areas that were affected by the war on drugs. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the money that was made from marijuana went to the public schooling and the infrastructure around those areas, because it was those areas that were also highly affected by the war on drugs, and it's that idea, also the idea of ending things like for-profit policing, like civil asset forfeiture laws, broken windows policing, those type of things.
So I have a lot of those things within my full plan.
Okay.
But when we talk about things like public education, especially, and roads especially, so the issue of public education is that, of course, we don't properly fund our public educational system, and we certainly have a disproportional issue. So my school district, we're 60% African American, and we have really the only way we've been able to do some of the things in our school district over the past few years, like an early college. We're an international baccalaureate candidate school for 6th through 10th grade. We've been doing a lot of professional development for our teachers around not just restorative practices, but also cultural proficiency. And we just got technology in the classroom because we've been able to get grants. And schools shouldn't function on whether or not they can get grants. Right. And also the way our state currently funds public education, they're certainly disproportionate, right? Yeah. When you're a lower income, especially a high minority population, you are definitely going to get less money per student than other places. But on top of that, it's not just bringing up school districts equitably across the state. It's making sure that then the school districts that need additional supports when it comes to, especially when you talk about, lower income areas around our state, you have kids with lead poisoning. Yeah. So that means those school districts need additional funding for behavioral issues as well as for special needs.
Yeah.
Because we know that affects learning. And so those are certainly things that we need to fund extra. And then on top of that, our state currently, even though we have Proposal A, which removed property taxes from public education, we did not stop the issue of millages, right? So millages are still based on property values, which means if you are in a community that your values of your homes have not gone up the way some higher income areas have, then it's going to be more difficult for you to raise the capital if you want to do a millage and you want to do something different for your school district.
Well,
so that also is something that needs to change, because the state needs to fund things like infrastructure. Because we're one of only 5 states that doesn't fund school infrastructure. It should not be up to a local community to be able to put a roof on their school building. That should be something that should be funded, especially things like Detroit, right? Detroit has this lead in their school district. We've known this for like the past 5 years.
I mean, also the schools not being able to have enough energy to get through the winter, and schools have being frozen tombs.
Yeah, absolutely, right? That should not be on a community.
Yeah.
That should be the state's responsibility to make sure that all children, at the very least, has equitable services in every aspect, including your buildings, including your curriculum even, right? Because I was just talking with a young girl who goes to Cass Tech in Detroit, and she has a class of about 30 kids in a calculus class. They have 8 books for those 30 kids for calculus, and what they're doing is they're taking pictures of the pages of the books and they're sharing it with each other so that they can learn calculus. This is calculus. I mean,
yeah. Okay. No, but that also goes. But you brought up something that I wanted to jump off on, because you brought up housing, and you also brought up housing and the equity of the of said neighborhoods. So that would lead into another thing that I'm also passionate about, and is universal basic income, or something along those lines that would help those communities financially, help the prices of their housing, and help the people who are those students are going to those schools by being able to have more money into the pocket of the homes that are there.
Everything is tied together, right?
Yeah. Would you be in support of something like that, or if you were in support of something like that, or even if you would not be, is there a way to implement something along those lines to help those people that are in that situation?
Yeah, so there's a couple things with housing. So the first thing with housing is really that right now the way land banks in our state work, and this is across the board, is that land banks have a tendency to hold on to properties until they can sell them in a block, so that they can sell them to corporations in a block, which means that the state, the county, and local municipalities that have their own land banks across the state are basically forcing people into homelessness, because they are not allowing individual families to buy an individual home. That is like this larger issue. Like the homeless population in my school district doubled from last year to this year. It doubled. And that's a huge problem, especially because we have a lot of, families, about a third of our families are school of choice in from Detroit. And so that additional problem, right? I mean, that affects my community, what's happening in Detroit. And I think what people forget is that when people are homeless, we are all affected, because it creates additional issues of crime, petty theft, because how are you supposed to put food on your family's table if you can't afford to put a roof over your family's head?
Or a table.
Or a table. Right? And so it's this larger issue of our priorities as a state, especially with the land banks, are basically to give the land to corporations and not have home ownership. But we certainly know in lots of studies that the more homeowners you have in any given area, the higher your basic income is, right? So when we talk about UBI, Universal Basic Income, there's a couple things. I'm not against it, but I have some issues with it, because it's just the same thing with like the minimum wage, right? Like you can implement it, but if you don't implement it in the right way, what you're going to do is you're going to force people into poverty that they're never going to be able to get out of, and they're just going to be getting the basic income. And so anytime you talk about a minimum wage or a UBI, it needs to be tied to things like housing and insurance and other basic needs, cost of living increases, so that I believe in a UBI, but in order to implement it correctly, I don't think like Democrats and Republicans would be able to implement it correctly to make sure that it's not just forcing people into poverty and that they're just on public assistance.
I agree with that. The way that I would in the way I look at it, in the way that we've discussed it, I would tie, just like how a minimum wage, I would tie it to inflation. I would tie the same thing, a UBI, to inflation, so that it's meeting this. It can meet a standard of living that everybody will be dignified of having, but also it would also raise the equity of the housing. So when you have a millage or you have an infrastructure bill that you want to implement, and you want to ask people to be able to use some of their taxpayer money to do so, that they will be able to do so without struggling in their everyday lives.
Yes, and that's really the key, right? Is that with all of these policies that are meant to bring people out of poverty, what happens is people end up getting stuck either just above or just below, right? You're either just above because you have that job and you want to keep that job, but you're just above that point where you can get the assistance that you really need to really raise yourself and your family up, or you're just below and you're stuck at just below because if you were to get something that pushed you above, it would actually make your life harder, right? Because then you're losing other basic services. And that's why things like a single payer system for healthcare is so important, which I do think we can do in the state. That's why everything's tied together, right? Like you can't talk about things like housing without also tying in things like a living wage, without also tying in things like healthcare, without also tying it. Because, healthcare really, when you talk about that issue, the major problem with healthcare is that because we are in a for-profit system, we only really have catastrophic healthcare, which is like if you're really, really sick, then you're going to the doctor or the hospital. But we don't have the ability for people who especially are living at that, working poor level. They can't afford to go to a doctor for preventative care. And that's what drives up the costs for everyone.
Yeah, and so how does Gretchen Whitmer stand on that issue in comparison to how you stand on that issue?
If I may interject real quick. So I was actually going to ask some related questions to that. I think like a lot of people have brought up the fact that Gretchen Whitmer, a lot of people thinking like her Goldman Sachs speech would be her relationship with Blue Cross Blue Shield,
hurt my chest.
And so I would like to. It would be helpful to know like kind of how do you compare and contrast between like her platform and yours, and also how do you feel about that relationship just as one of her opponents?
I think both. So
be honest. No. On this show, we keep it real.
So
we keep it 100. So
my joke about the difference between the Democrats and Republicans is that Democrats want to send women and gay people to war. Like that's the difference. Like
rainbow imperialism, everybody.
They're when you look at even just hard policies, right? The only thing that Obama ever changed policy-wise was to allow women and gay people to serve on the front lines of war. We still don't have, equity when it comes to, adoption and housing and jobs and things like that. So, it's a joke, but it's not really a joke because it's true. So, I think the policies of Whitmer and Schuette are pretty much the same policies, right? Which is, we want everyone to be able to have health care as long as, the insurance companies can keep getting richer.
Where they use access?
Right? Access to health. Like, I have access to a house in Bloomfield Hills. I can't afford a house in Bloomfield Hills. Right?
Is it bad that I don't even know where Bloomfield Hills is?
That's it's like one of the richest cities in Oakland County.
I know. I'm just like, I don't think I've ever been near or around, and I've been almost everywhere in this
You'd
state.
probably get pulled over.
I have been. I have been probably over there. Like, oh man.
Yeah. So it's one of those communities, right? And it's not to say that that's that means that people that live there are bad. It's just that it's a very wealthy community.
Oh man! And let me tell you about a story. I'll tell you about a story off air about me going to the Upper Peninsula.
Oh yeah.
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 So actually,
but so the difference, really between my policies and both of their policies, really, actually between everyone else that's running for this race, because the only person that's in this race that believes in a single payer system is myself. Out of all of the other third party candidates, I'm the only person. And so when we look at a single payer system, there's something that we can do in the state because one of the issues, right, is that our state has a specific amount of revenue to taxation. And that's kind of a stuck point, right? We can only raise taxes so much based on revenue, and we can only do it in certain ways. And when I've looked at our state budget, I don't think that healthcare should be a tax. I think it should be a separate insurance that you can check off on your taxes so that we can have multiple plans, and it's an insurance plan through the state to remove the issue of profit in healthcare in our state, and then give people choices when it comes to level of coverage based on single, family, etc. And then on top of that, we can then start doing other things within that piece, right? So when the state gives you the insurance, then that means that you don't have to pay the insurance, which means that the state can say, well, you're just paying for insurance, period, which means you can go to the doctor. You can go to any doctor in the state of Michigan. Because, that's one of the things that Republicans like to say, oh, well, you'll never have a choice, or there's going to be these death panels. And I'm like, there's already death panels when it comes to insurance. We know that people get denied, care simply because the insurance companies don't want to pay the expense of it.
There's 45,000 people die every year.
Yeah.
So you don't like the fact that your insurance is tied to your car insurance here in Michigan?
Shoot. The additional issue of car insurance. So I share a zip code with Detroit, right? Okay. So I paid Detroit car insurance.
Ooh.
Because I share a zip code with Detroit. And so it's this larger issue of,
sorry for you.
how to drive down our insurance costs across the state is to create, number one, a citizen commission for car insurance. Other states that have done this, as soon as they have some kind of elected officials that are overseeing them, it automatically drops the cost because now there's accountability, right? And then on top of that, you can pass legislation, and I don't think it would be very difficult to do so, that says you can only charge one price for the same car around the entire state. And other states have done this as well, and that also drives down the costs.
All right, folks, I gotta go. But Andy, y'all keep having this conversation. I do like you.
Nice to meet you.
And you definitely can. We gonna have more conversations before next week.
Well, I mean, it's spooky. The election's a week away.
It is.
Yeah. Okay, so you know what? I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this question because I want to really just focus on the issues. But if I may play devil's or centrist advocate here.
Yeah.
There's kind of similar to 2016. I think there's been a lot of we gotta vote blue no matter who. We gotta make sure Bill Schuette doesn't get in, and even from maybe a further left perspective, I look at Gretchen Whitmer. I'm like, well, she didn't steal her primary. She's not a war criminal, and she has said. I know she did say some things about shutting down Line 5. But
those are pretty low standards.
Yeah, it is pretty low standard. How do you kind of respond to that kind of line of reasoning? When people bring up the whole kind of spoiler thing, and also kind of branching off of that, I actually had a question from another co-host who couldn't be here, and the exact wording of her question is why hasn't there been a push from the Green Party of Michigan for ranked choice voting? But it's kind of broader, just maybe talk about your stance on ranked choice voting and how that, how you feel about it, how that could be beneficial to the state. So.
All right, so that's a loaded question. All right, so let's start. No, it's all right. Let's start with the spoiler thing, right? So I would say I have people supporting me that fall on all sorts of spectrums, and I would actually say I have less support from people that are Democrats than anyone else. I have had Republican candidates come up to me and tell me that they're impressed with me after forums that I've done. And so I'm certainly drawing people from all sorts of the spectrum because truly the Green Party, I think, is the best of both worlds. we have very conservative values within our 10 key values, like decentralization, which means that we believe in small local control over anything, which isn't necessarily like small government. It means that school boards and local city councils should have more power than the state, and the state should have more power than the federal government, which is technically a very conservative value. Also, conservation is a conservative value, technically. So, I'm definitely getting people on that end. Plus, I am a gun owner, and I have a lot of points in my gun control platform that people that are gun owners and lean conservative also really like, especially... I think that it's kind of freeing as a Green Party person that people, especially people that lean more conservative, actually will look at me more so than they'll look at a Democrat.
That's just very true. Yeah.
And then, people that are independent are just looking at any candidate, and they're just looking for the best candidate. And I think that I fit that bill for a lot of people when it comes to my background in finance, my background in environmental activism, my background, I've worked elections since 2006. I currently serve as an elected official. I've been on the ground in Flint. So I have a lot of things within my personal background as well as in my platform that really kind of transcends this issue of party lines. And I do have a full plan. It's like a 15-page plan that I put out just a few days ago that has just the first 90 days and all of the points and how I think we can make these things work, including the financial aspect of things. It's a high-level plan, but I think anyone who's running as governor, if they tell you, oh yeah, I can do this and this is the exact plan that I'm going to do, they don't understand how government works. That's why this is a high-level plan. This is what I'm going to fight for, and we're going to come together, bring all stakeholders to the table, and then we're going to create the details together. And I think that that's what anyone should be promising, right? I can't tell you, you elect me governor, I'm going to give you this exact thing, because that's not how government works. Mm-mm. And I'm a political scientist, so so I have to go based off of that. Now, when we talk about elections and ranked choice voting, Maine actually is a place where we have a huge green insurgency. We actually flipped a couple legislators in Maine.
Hey, nice.
And we've got about 30 people running. Now, in Michigan, we've got... somewhere between 22 and 25, we have a couple people that have done some write-ins and some things like that recently. So I'm not 100% exactly our number, but we're between 22 and 25. So we're one of the states that we have some of the most Greens running around the state. And I like ranked choice voting. There's a few different ways of doing ranked choice voting, and I think that that's something that we really need to look into. There's different issues with each kind of ranked choice voting, right? So there's different ways of doing ranked choice voting. I certainly agree with it. Now, one of the reasons why you haven't really seen the Green Party as much around in general is because we're still kind of, there's the old school mentality of we have a convention and we put our name on the ballot and we stand for office and we pat ourselves on the back for our names being on the ballot. And then you have the new school, which are people no, we're going to actively campaign and we are going to be, contenders for all of these seats. And so that's really why you haven't seen the Green Party as out and about as much, because this is the first year, and I've had some old school Greens that really wanted us to work together long ago, say, oh my goodness, this is the first time I've seen candidates working together. We've got candidates in Kent County that are helping canvass for my campaign. We've got people in Detroit that are helping canvass for other statewide candidates. We've got, Flint and all over the place, So this is really, we're breaking new ground for the Green Party this year. It kind of started after 2016, and then we're really just pushing forward. So, I like the idea of ranked choice voting. I think, looking at seeing how Maine's works, this year is really kind of their biggest election with RCV.
Yeah.
And going off of that, right? So going, okay, so now let's look at what Maine did and how did they do it? Because I know the libertarians are also very interested in it. And I'm sure other third party, the U.S. taxpayers and natural law, et cetera, would certainly be, love to see that happen too. So I think that that's something, after November, when we start looking at 2019 and 2020 really seriously, because of course we have to get through Tuesday first.
Oh yeah.
But looking at those were all passed by citizen referendums, and so that's certainly something that we can do a citizen referendum for. But we need to make sure that we find the right way that's going to work the best for Michigan, And it may even be something that's not just necessarily ranked choice voting, but something that creates more of a parliamentary system. Something that would be, so what's the percentage that all of these parties are getting? And then we're going to seat people percentage into our state legislature to make sure, so there's a few things I think that we need to look at. Personally, I'm a big fan of the parliamentary system. And I think that there's a way of kind of merging the two of, ranked choice voting as well as a parliamentary system and figuring out how that's going to work in our state legislature. Because we certainly have a gridlock, right? And it's really, at this point, when you look at Congress and when you look at just our state legislature, it's just, did the Republicans introduce it? Well, if you're a Democrat, you can't vote for it. Oh, did a Democrat introduce it? Oh, well, if you're a Republican, you can't vote for it.
I've actually seen posts about there's this one that just stuck in my mind, just how tribalism is just such a detriment. Somebody is like a Facebook comment, it's like, well, I'm not supporting Proposal 2 because I hear a lot of Democrats are for it. So it's got a little bit of time left. I want to make sure to hit you on a couple other really important issues.
Yeah.
And I know, so you started talking about education, and you said you are currently on a school board here in the state of Michigan. A story that we covered a while back, and still, a pending issue. Pat Colbeck and a few of his Republican friends came up with some very interesting curriculum changes to the Michigan.
Like the anti-social studies stuff.
Yeah. So I wanted to hear, one, kind of what's your response to that, and two, what do you see as being what could be done as a governor to kind of safeguard our school curriculum from that kind of partisan tinkering. Yeah.
So, one of the things when you talk about school curriculum is that's actually a state school board thing more than anything. And we do have a green running for state school board, Sherry Wells. So please vote for Sherry. But when we look at things like curriculum, so number one, the state needs to fund curriculum because we don't currently fund curriculum. We don't have any kind of earmarked funds that are going to school districts to make sure that they can buy books or technology or anything of the sort. And I think that's really important, especially having an aligned curriculum in every school district is extremely important. So funding a curriculum position in every school district, that's going to be someone who's going to make sure that across first grade, all kids in that first grade class are being taught the same thing. And then from K through 12, what you're being taught is what you need to know across the board. And I think that does need to be up to the local school districts. But when we talk about things like just kind of basic curriculum, we don't properly teach U.S. history. I think that's a really important piece of curriculum, making sure that we now have a law that you have to teach the Holocaust. I think that's really important, but we should also be teaching slavery and Native American genocide. That is how our country was founded, and this is why our country is the way it is. I think that's really important. And then the other thing, we need to stop being an abstinence-only state. We need to properly teach sex education, and on top of that, I think we also need to teach age-appropriate consent education from K through 12. There are certainly ways that you can start teaching, kindergartners and first graders about consent without necessarily bringing in sex ed. But that's a really important component, especially when you talk about rape culture and how do we end rape culture. The first step is to understand what does consent mean, and that you have ownership over your own person. And there's certainly ways that we can, start teaching that at a really young age without getting into the sex ed piece, but making sure that we're really teaching what consent means across the board. I think that's really important too.
Okay, great. Thank you. My next question, it's going to be a climate change question, but it's going to be a bit of an odd one.
Okay.
And it's not the way a lot of folks frame it. So I want to start by saying things look pretty bad. We've got the current administration in office. A right-wing dictator just got in charge of 2/3 of the Amazon rainforest. There was that report saying we got about 10 years to really get our stuff collected together. Now, a lot of the research I've done about Michigan shows that we're actually going to, there will be a lot of negative impacts, particularly more intense storms and rainfall. But compared to a lot of other parts of the United States, which could, some parts could be downright uninhabitable in the next several decades, Michigan is going to be somewhat more comfortable. A lot of projections about like being able to grow corn in the UP and whatnot. So it's not something I hear a lot of politicians talk about, is like kind of getting us ready for the future, and the fact that Michigan it may very well end up being kind of a epicenter of climate refugees.
Yep, a destination state.
Yeah.
Yes.
So how does a state collectively get ready for something like that? And, what would you want to do as governor? Or, what can we even push on the local level to kind of push our climate discussion in that direction?
Yeah, no, that's certainly that's certainly something I've actually been talking about, is that we are going to be a destination state. And so there's two things. I mean, we need to be able to economically be able to, get this influx of people. Because it's one thing to have people just move to our state who may be like retirees and have the ability to just move and like buy a house and be cool without having a job. But the other thing is we're going to have to think about, we're going to have this influx of population. We need to make sure that they can be employed. So that's why we really need to look at like jobs of the future, right? So jobs of the future are in green energy. We have lots of manufacturing buildings around our state that are not in use anymore, but we can turn them into useful spots to build wind farms and solar panels and start, getting into hydropower and things like that. And then also that thing about, when we look at industrial hemp, and we can create new economy that way. And then we can also make sure that on a local level that we're supporting small businesses and giving these grants to make sure that people can create their own businesses and start new businesses. And that's really important, because we can talk all we want about, climate change is real and we need to do something about it, but we need to do something about it. And it's both economics, right, and also environmental. So that's why, this pollution issue of like pollution fees and how do we like basically cost out these businesses and start charging them the true cost of their doing business to curb the impact. And then on the flip side, making sure that, okay, so when we create new jobs, making sure that those new jobs are green jobs and that those jobs don't have the carbon footprint or the methane footprint. Like there's 8 different natural gas plants around our entire state that have asked for new builds over the past year, either new builds or expansions, which means that they want to frack our state because the Nexus Pipeline and Rover Pipeline are not giving us enough natural gas for that many expansions around our state. And that's what I think the KWA pipeline, like the catalyst for the Flint water crisis, was really for, because it's going across a really rural areas. And we have, when Jennifer Granholm was governor, a lot of outstanding oil and natural gas exploration permits that really just needed a source of raw water in a rural area to use. That is not... natural gas is not energy efficient. It is actually worse for climate change because of the methane. It both leaks methane. It, of course, is terrible for our groundwater supply. It causes earthquakes. We know that this is a much kind of larger issue of fracking. And so that's why it's really important. You'll hear Democrats and Republicans say, oh, well, those are jobs. Those are new jobs. Those are, number one, not jobs of the future. Number two, those new builds are coming on the backs of us as taxpayers for an industry that maybe will have a 5-year lifespan. Maybe. And what it's going to do and the damage to our environment and our state is really atrocious.
All right. So we're about at the end of the program. Just real quick, if people are interested in your campaign, how can they get involved, help out? How can they find you?
Sure. So I need all the help I can get. You can go to my website, www.kurland4michigan.com. That's Kurland, the number 4, Michigan.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of my handles are /Kurland4MI. So Kurland, the number 4MI.
All right. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for coming out to the studio and getting an interview today. And remember, everybody, November 6th, voting day. Go out and try to mitigate some of the harm coming down from all the corporate fascists out there. So I do believe, ladies and gentlemen, if we have enough time, we might go into some extra innings. I've got an interview with Marcia Squier, candidate for U.S. Senate, that I would like to play. I don't believe there's any DJs coming in afterwards, so stick around a little bit longer if you would like to hear that. She's also a Green Party candidate, once again running against Debbie Stabenow, John James, and a few other minor party candidates who I can't remember off the top of my head right now. But keep your dial locked. You are listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution. Hold on. I'm trying to find... Okay. There we go. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are here outside of this recorded tonight after the Isaac meeting down here on the north side. I am here with Michigan. She is running for the Senate, as in the Federal American Senate, against Debbie Stabenow, John James, and I forget, there's a couple of other minor party challengers. I can't really remember name off the head, but I wanted to kind of take an opportunity while you're here in town to talk to you about your campaign. Of course, talk about some of the issues as well. So I guess we'll start with, today, kind of springboard with some issues that are important here locally. Not to mention, I think like the whole topic that they were centered around at the meeting today was immigration, and I know that's also been in the news a lot. As somebody who's really been outspoken about foreign policy, I was wondering if maybe you had a unique stance or platform when it came to not only the issue of like immigration justice, but kind of what role our own government plays in these issues.
So thanks for having me on your show, first of all. And yes, I am running for U.S. Senate here in Michigan. My name is Marcia Squier. And as far as immigration goes, the pledge I took tonight was to support immigration reform and give the DACA recipients a path to citizenship. In case people don't know what DACA is, it's the people who were brought here as minors by their parents without their consent because they weren't old enough. So I am here to pledge my support for the DACA recipients and immigration reform in general so that people can come here in an easier way than it is right now. That's a lot of times it's a barrier in and of itself. The cost is too high. The requirements are too extensive. And so we definitely need to take a good hard look at immigration reform. The problem I see with my opponents who were not here, I do have 4 opponents, like he said, and my leading opponents, John James and Debbie Stabenow, weren't here and did not send a representative either. That just kind of shows me that they're really not committed to immigration reform. And if you want to dig a little deeper into why, it's probably because there's no money in immigration reform. They tend to be bought and paid for by corporations, and there isn't like a corporation of immigration, so this isn't really high on their list of priorities on either the Republican or the Democrat side. But me being the people's candidate, the only non-corporate choice for U.S. Senate this year, people is my main priority, and that includes our immigrants and our DACA recipients, whether they be legal immigrants or undocumented immigrants.
Yeah, and kind of going a little further with that too. I know recently you actually, I think for the first time, got to challenge Debbie in person, and I guess one of the things I was curious with about that is you mentioned, you kind of contrasted how, neither have like a vested interest in immigration, and this is going to kind of springboard onto some other foreign policy questions, but, to what extent do you think, especially Democrats seem to have a disinterest in this issue, based on 2 things. They never really acknowledge why refugees come to the United States, particularly a lot of culpability is from the United States government itself. And also, there's always kind of that argument. It's like, oh, they come to do the jobs that we shouldn't do. So, like, your vision as somebody who would be a senator, how would you try to kind of change that lens in which kind of the immigration issue is viewed?
So I think the first thing we need to do is support the new fourth estate. Our corporate media is not our friend, and they are not friends of immigrants either. They give us a spoon-fed version of what's really going on out there, the version that their corporate overlords tell them is okay to tell the public. So we need to support independent new fourth estate media types like Andy here, so that way we can get the word out about the truth better. And then, as far as traditional lowercase d Democrats goes, a lot of it is they don't really even know what's going on. I've been to candidate forums all across the state, and there's been little to no questions about foreign policy at all. So it's a lot of it is uninformed or misinformed by our corporate media. So once we get the public more informed and wake people up to the numbness of war, we've been at war my kids' entire lives. I was pregnant on 9/11 loading my FedEx truck when the planes hit. My daughter's driving now. She's almost 17. And literally all my kids, 9, 10, 14, and 16, have never known any other way of life. And they don't even see it, because it's not here. It's not on our soil. But it is affecting our pocketbooks, because over 53% of our budget is going towards the military-industrial complex right now. We just passed the largest military budget in the history of the world, and Debbie Stabenow voted for it. And I hate to tell you this, but so would John James have voted for that too. But they don't like to talk about their similarities. They only want to contrast the corporate differences between the two.
And I understand you challenged her on that directly at a recent forum, and how did that go, just out of curiosity? Because it's not something that politicians really get challenged on a lot publicly.
So basically I said that, Debbie just voted for the largest military budget in the history of the world without even batting an eyelash. And why is she giving our president, actually this is her third president that she's been a senator for, why does she give our presidents basically blank checks and indiscriminate bombing capabilities to bomb as many countries as much as he wants at will without voting for war first? And basically Debbie's response was, I'm going to keep doing it. She has no other response than, yeah, she is a warmonger, and that's the way it's going to be.
Yeah, and would you push, if you get elected to the U.S. Senate, would you push for making sure the responsibility for declaring war is back in Congress? Because interestingly, you have seen a few, and I do mean like you could count them on one hand, a few people in Congress calling for that power to basically come back to Congress. Because, since 9/11, Congress basically abdicated that responsibility, gave unilateral power to the executive branch to, declare war. So is that something you would prioritize?
Absolutely. Our authorized use of military force was voted for by Debbie Stabenow back in 2001 after 9/11. Now, I can't necessarily fault her for that, because Barbara Lee was literally the only lone no vote that day out of 535 people. But back in 2017, Senator Rand Paul brought it up to end authorized use of military force, and Debbie voted against ending it. And that just appalls me. I can understand back in 2001 when it was like before anyone even made heads or tails of, the fact that we were sold into war on lies of weapons of mass destruction. Before anyone even knew any of that, she was voting for it. But now here we are almost 2 decades later, and she's voting against ending it. And she's part of the so-called resistance. Why is she doing these things, like giving Trump the largest military budget ever and letting him bomb wherever he wants at the expense of our own healthcare, education, and infrastructure?
So I'm going to kind of pivot to another local issue that I don't know how closely you follow what happens in Kalamazoo, but for the last several months, we've had a large-scale kind of, I would even say like uprising of the homeless population. There was a freedom encampment down in our main kind of central park, Millam Park, for a couple months. That got torn down by the city in very maligned kind of police action. But it's brought up a lot of issues around, particularly a city like Kalamazoo. It's kind of has this culture of philanthropy. So ostensibly, it seems like, we have the money to deal with the homeless issue more effectively, but it seems like there's always bureaucratic barriers that are getting in the way. And I was wondering if you could speak to just kind of the financial priorities of, America more broadly and how we really should be trying to tackle the homelessness issue.
So I think I heard it said too that there's enough churches in America for all the homeless people to be housed at our churches. That's how bad it is. There's a lot of churches here in America, and so we absolutely have to be committed to getting homeless people into homes. A lot of our country is really cold at night in the winter. This isn't something that's sustainable. We're not living in a tropical paradise up here in Michigan, and most of America is like that. So as a senator, it is very important for me to try to cut out those lobbyists that are preventing, this from happening. So we can, I would love to be on the Senate Appropriations Committee so I could help figure out how our money is being spent. That's our money, and this is our government, and so if we evenly distributed things more, like if we ended the wars overseas, we would have all kinds of extra money just automatically. If we ended the war on drugs, that would prevent a lot of homelessness too, and that would get people out of prison. And if we did that retroactively, we could wipe all those records clean, which is one of the barriers that people have to getting housing, is if you have a criminal record. Now, if someone has a criminal record because of cannabis, which is good for you, how does that even make sense that you're prevented from housing? So we need to end the war on drugs, and we'll have all this extra money that we were spending on our police and our judicial branch. So we'll have plenty of money for, housing, affordable housing, education, and healthcare for all. We need to be fully educated from pre-K all the way to PhD, plus skilled trades. So that way, we have better options once we get on the other end of our education.
Yeah. And I kind of pivot just more broad strokes. So with your campaign, and I'm going to ask you a couple just kind of campaign questions, but I did want to ask you just what would you say are the top 3 issues that are at the core of the campaign that you're running right now?
Okay, so I guess you could say that one of my biggest things is trying to get big money and corporate influence out of politics. And I am the only candidate in this race that's a true non-corporatist. And what that means is I do not accept any corporate money, any super PAC money, or foreign interests. I only accept small donations and only in small amounts. In fact, I'm trying to break the Guinness Book of World Records for the least amount of money raised for a U.S. Senate win. Once we get the big money out of politics, we can do things like tackling and ending the war on drugs and ending the wars overseas, the so-called war on terror, that's actually just wars to secure our fossil fuel interests overseas. So I would, I'm also the only candidate that feels that way. Getting big money out of politics, ending the war on drugs, retroactively legalizing cannabis, and ending the wars overseas. This is what it comes down to. It's either you're for the people or you're for the corporations. It's not about liberal or conservative or left versus right or Democrat versus Republican. My campaign supports Democrats, Republicans, independents, libertarians, Greens, U.S. taxpayers, Natural Law Party, Working Class Party. I don't care. You're a person. I'm for you. And I'm out here on this ballot working for you.
So that kind of leads me to, I guess, more of a tactical question. And, well, I guess I'll preface by just asking, what was it that spurred you to run this very grassroots campaign for U.S. Senate?
So that's a great question. I was actually, first inspired to run for federal office back in 2016. I was a Bernie Sanders supporter during the presidential primaries. And I witnessed my first major voter suppression firsthand. Every single superdelegate in Michigan unanimously cast their vote against the winning candidate, which effectively deleted well over 150,000 votes for the winner. And that just really broke my heart. because half of those superdelegates are elected officials that I voted for, and so did you probably. And here they are ignoring the will of the constituents. And so that got me thinking, why doesn't my voice matter? And why doesn't my vote count? But really at the end of the day, my two takeaways from Bernie's campaign back then was that it's not about him, it's about us. And if we're not happy with the way things are going, then we need to run for office ourselves or support someone who is. And again, so it's not about me either. This campaign isn't about me, it's about us. And Bernie's not in Michigan, Bernie's in Vermont. I'm running against Debbie Stabenow. I'm not running against Trump. I'm not running against Hillary Clinton. I am not running against Jill Stein. I'm running against Debbie Stabenow. Because if you look at her voting record and her donor list, it is high time for her to retire.
And I guess before I spur on more campaign questions, what are some of the most egregious votes? Because I know that this is something you brought up during your campaign before.
So we talked about how she voted for the largest military budget ever. That's not a first-time thing for her. She regularly votes for that. We also talked about how she voted for authorized use of military force and against ending it. She also voted to roll back banking regulations. She also co-authored the DARK Act, which is the Denying Americans Right to Know Act, which is a GMO labeling law that makes it extremely inconvenient for the consumer to know if their food contains GMO products or not. It also makes it illegal for states to enact their own GMO labeling regulations. Then she also co-authored new legislation for a new pipeline to replace Line 5 through the Straits of Mackinac through the Great Lakes she claims to save. Her and Gary Peters, that was the other co-author.
Yeah, that's startling to hear, because I know even it seems like the other kind of mainstream Democrats have been running, have at least given lip service towards doing something about Line 5. So
yeah, they don't talk about fracking though either.
No, they certainly don't.
Fracking on the campaign trail at all.
Yeah,
which we need to ban it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that one. So from kind of like a tactical perspective, I know there's an ongoing debate among a lot of folks in the left about the best way to engage with electoral politics. Some would say run as an independent, run through a leftist minor party like Greens or the Socialist Party or the Socialist Equality, etc. Working class party. And then there's kind of another argument that certain candidates have seen some success with, which is running as a Democrat, but as a member of the Democratic Socialists of America. So I guess I'm just curious, so when you decided to run, why did you decide to run as what you ran as, and what do you see as why you need to be running as, well, I guess independent and then green. So
actually in 2016, when I first declared my run was against Brenda Lawrence in the 14th district, and I ran as a Green because it was too late for me to run any other way. I am an independent voter. I was never a registered member of the Democrat Party or the Republican Party or any party, but I was a voter. So I ran as a Green because the Green Party actually has, in my opinion, the best platform hands down. And so it was a natural shift for me to go to the Green Party, which is also, the entire party is non-corporate. If any Green Party candidate that's on your ballot in November is not taking any corporate money, not just myself. That entire party is decentralized and non-corporate, which I really like. Plus their platform of, human rights and economic justice really coincides with my own values. The thing that I ran into, though, was, you get the infighting and you've got, the power grabs and the misogyny sometimes. And so I wasn't necessarily, impressed with the inner workings of the party itself, but I really do support the platform. So when I declared my run against Debbie Stabenow, which I intended all along back in 2016 when she co-authored the DARK Act, I declared as an independent, because to me it's always been more about the platform and not the party. Back then it was about ballot access. That was the only way I could get on the ballot mid-July when Bernie endorsed Hillary. So this time around I became a newly single mom of 4 kids right during the height of my signature gathering phase. And so, I was in the middle of bawling my eyes out the entire month of March. and just really seeing that double the signature requirement as very overwhelming. I would have needed 30,000 signatures instead of 15. So basically on May 5th, the Green Party called me up and said, hey, our convention is today. We've got a placeholder candidate, but nobody really wants it. We recommend you. So if you want to come up here, we're going to table it till after lunch till you can get here. So it's totally different than last time around. Last time I sought them out. This time they sought me out because they watched me run as an independent, promoting that platform for well over a year before I finally accepted their nomination for the general election season. And they understand my feelings about the Democrat and Republican Party. The way I feel about them, it's illogical for me as a true non-corporatist to run as a D or an R, because the DNC and the GOP are both corporations in and of themselves. They're fundraising mills for the rich and powerful. They're corporations of corporatists that represent other corporations. So why would I join a corporation in order to take on the corporations? That's just not logical to me. And I do support the whole Dementor movement and maybe reform from within. I'm more of an all sides approach kind of gal. I think they've hit us from every side. We need to hit them right back from every side. And we need an army of candidates all over this entire country, all over the world. This isn't just unique to America. The oligarchy is controlling a lot of us, not just here in the United States.
Oh, that's for sure.
And so more citizen candidates need to get out there and just get their name on the ballot, however they find is the best way. I'm not going to tell you how to run your race. I'm friends with lots of Democrats across the country these days. Even Stephen Jaffe, who ran against Nancy Pelosi, endorsed my campaign. And, an independent like Tim Canova taking on Debbie Wasserman Schultz. I love me some candidates who are taking on Clinton's superdelegates. I don't care what letter is after their name. If they're running against these people that are ignoring the will of the people, then I support that. But there was no Dementor folks here in Michigan that ran against any of our superdelegates. None of them got primaried this year. Debbie Stabenow didn't. Brenda Lawrence didn't. Dan Kildee, Debbie Dingell. None of them. And, you got Sander Levin that retired and John Conyers Jr. retired. So there was 7 of those 17, I believe it was, superdelegates. None of the Democrats ran against them. So while I do support the Dementor movement, I hope that the Dementor folks can appreciate the fact that maybe I see things a little differently than they do and not be mad at me for choosing a different path than their own. Just like I don't, diss them. I don't, go down on them for at least trying. I want more and more and more citizen candidates every year. I want to have the worst problem in the world be I have too many great candidates to choose from, right?
Yeah, wouldn't that be something to see?
Yeah.
Oh, man. So another thing I wanted to ask you about, and we were just talking a little bit about, 2016. So it seems one of the things I've seen you be really outspoken about is voter suppression. And I think for a lot of us over the last couple of years, particularly like 2016, in both the Democratic primary and the general election, we were calling out, a lot of activists I know were calling out, there's a major voter suppression going on. Nobody paid much attention to it. It seems leading up to these midterms, I'm starting to see more mainstream coverage of things like, Chris Krobach's cross-check and restrictive voter ID laws. What do you think needs to be done about voter suppression? And, why do you think, neither party has really been tackling? I mean, to the certain extent, I've seen more grassroots Democrats talking about it lately. But again, it's not something I hear brought up a lot from the halls of Congress.
So I'm not just concerned about voter suppression, but I'm also concerned with the integrity of the vote. And I'm really glad that you asked this question. I am aligned with some election integrity activists that are trying to sue our government to force them to do their job and preserve the ballot images that our voting machines take of our ballots. So I don't know if you guys are aware of this or not, but the voting machines don't actually count your paper ballot. They count the image of your ballot, and they take a photocopy of the front and back of your image. Now the problem is these machines, the workers are turning them off, or they're deleting them, or saying it's illegal to keep them. And so John Roberts Brakey, he's a friend of Bev Harris. I don't know if you guys know her. She's from the movie Hacking Democracy. She's the one that exposed fractionalization of the votes and the fact that our voting machines are manipulatable and easily hackable. And because they are connected to the internet, contrary to popular belief, they really are connected to the internet, and that's how they transmit their data. It makes total sense. So what we're trying to do is put together some citizens that are voters in Michigan to join in as a plaintiff on this lawsuit, which isn't like for damages or anything like that. We're just trying to force the government to do their job. And we're trying to get it out there before Election Day so that way these clerks all know that we're watching them and that they better do their job, because it's illegal to not keep these ballot images, because that's the only thing that we use to count the vote. And I want one person to equal one vote, not a half a vote or a quarter of a vote or pre-programmed percentages into the machines or the central tabulator.
Just real quick, could you just briefly describe what fractionalized voting is for anybody listening who that might be an alien term to them?
Yeah, so let's say you've got some hacker coming in and they can determine who's going to be the winner and who's going to be the loser. And they set the percentage. X candidate gets 51% of the vote. Y candidate's going to get 49% of the vote. So no matter how many votes candidate X gets, they end up with 51% of the vote. So their percentage is actually over 1.0. You know, vote can count for more than a vote for the so-called winning candidate, the selected candidate. Now the losing candidate, whose percentage was set at 49%, no matter how many votes they get, their votes are going to be fractionalized or lessened in order to meet that 49% pre-requirement that was pre-programmed into the machine. And I know that a lot of people don't vote because they think our votes don't count. And I want you guys to know that I'm aware of that, and I'm willing to fight it, and I'm calling out all of my opponents for not even talking about it. You know, the Democrats want to talk about the Russia, and then the Republicans want to talk about dead people voting. But
or immigrants.
Yeah, but literally, we have fraudulent voting machines. And it's very important that we have hand-counted paper ballots with citizen oversight and transparent verified results. Not just verifiable results, but actual verified results. We want to know that our vote actually counts. You know, and I'm not saying like because I want to win. I'm saying because I want more people voting so we get a truer picture, a truer snapshot of the representatives that we want.
Oh, you know, I always tell people it's a great Greg Palast quote. He's a fairly famous election fraud, voter suppression investigator, and he's always said, "Oh, you did? Yeah. I got my picture with him once. I geeked out." He once said, "If your vote was not important, they wouldn't be trying so hard to take it away from you." So I wanted to ask another kind of local question, and I don't know if we've talked about the environment to a large extent in this interview, but one of the local issues we've encountered here in Kalamazoo, particularly in one of our outlying towns in Parchment, was the proliferation of PFAS in groundwater, which is it's a chemical that it's in like firefighting foam and a lot of industrial manufacturing. And I know, like, you know, as somebody running in Michigan, I'm sure you're probably very in tune to a lot of like the water quality issues going on all over the state. What is the main problem that is causing these, and like what is a tangible solution we can get behind to make sure that again, it's a really horrible irony that, you know, we've got the most fresh water of any place in the country, and yet not a drop to drink for its residents. I think our Miss Michigan said that, but.
Yeah, so I'm coming off of Lake St. Clair myself, over there in between, you know, the Detroit River and the St. Clair River. It's called the heart of the Great Lakes, like the 6th Great Lake. That's where I'm from. And we have PCBs. And we have our water has E. coli levels that are super high because of the shape of the lake and the flow of the current in the shipping channel. And you know, we've got a whole section being drudged and redone because of the PCBs over there in Lake St. Clair, and then you've got the PFAS, and then you've even got, lead in the water up in Flint, so PFAS is a relatively new term that we're all still kind of learning about. I've heard of PCBs for years because I live over there. We've all heard about the lead in the water in Flint. What has it been, four plus years now that they haven't had clean drinking water? So for them, I definitely want to replace the pipes, not just coat them. It's important that we give them new infrastructure under their homes and businesses. And then, as far as like PFAS, like in the groundwater, we really got to put our best effort forward into fixing this. We've got companies, what is it, Enbridge over here?
Oh, yeah.
They get paid to clean up their own oil spills. It's not even in their best interest to prevent an oil spill because they literally get paid to clean it up. And so we've got to put it like an independent commission on this or something like that, not like what we've got Enbridge doing to their own spills. We've got to get somebody coming in, and people need to be held accountable. How many people were held accountable for the Flint water crisis? It's because they're all scratching each other's back. It's a big club, and we ain't in it, and there's really nothing we can do about it until we change things. And nothing changes if nothing changes. So you can keep voting for the same thing that's brought us to this point for the last 50 years, or you can dare to not be afraid and not be fear-mongered and into voting for your heart and for your conscience and voting for someone who actually cares about the people.
All right, and I think I'm going to leave off one last question before we wrap up. In your travels through the state, because you've been campaigning for a while now, like I think over a year, is that right?
Yeah.
In your travels around the state of Michigan, like what are some of the issues that voters have like brought up to you the most, or maybe even some issues that you weren't aware of that were kind of brought to your attention?
That's a great question. I think that, when I was up in the UP, they're really concerned about jobs. A lot of their industries have left the area, the mining and the logging and, those things are things of the past. So that was something I heard of a lot up in the UP, is that they're very concerned about keeping their people in the UP and not losing them to other locations where there's better job opportunities, and that holds true really everywhere, right? And the environment too. I was up in Traverse City yesterday, up in Leland, Michigan, up in the Leelanau Peninsula, and they're concerned about the environment, and it was an overlying theme, I guess, would be the environment and jobs and things like that. And I actually am touting a jobs program I call #HIRE, which stands for Healthcare, Infrastructure, Renewables, and Education. Because as a supporter of education and healthcare for all, we're going to need more healthcare providers and more educators. And we obviously need new infrastructure, and we need to switch over to renewable energy as soon as possible, away from fossil fuels. And, because not everybody's cracked up to go to college, we've got, skilled trades like that too, that I would support. And so that has really gone a long way. I think if we focused on those 4 areas, that it would be for the betterment of all, not just, here in Kalamazoo or up in Leland or over all the way in Iron Mountain by the Wisconsin border. Everyone, we have more in common than we have different. Whether you're from the left or the right, or whether you listen to mainstream media or you go for your independent media, or whether you're Catholic or Muslim or atheist, I support atheism as well. A lot of atheists out there are concerned about their rights being ignored because of the whole fight over religion. So it has been an interesting trip for me, and it is wrapping up now. I got less than 2 weeks to go. Kind of looking back on it a little nostalgically, but I did meet some really great people along the way, and I inspired some candidates to run, like Sue Norman in Ionia. She's running as an independent in Michigan.
Great.
And, it's just great to see that, like I said, my takeaway from Bernie's campaign is, it's not about him, it's not about them, it's about us. And we need to take our government back, because they're supposed to be working for us, and they're clearly not. So we need to replace them with people that are willing to do the work for the people, not the corporations, because unlike the Citizens United decision, Supreme Court ruling, I disagree. Corporations are not people. They are unfeeling corporate entities that only care about their bottom line. You know, money isn't everything. And I can attest to that. You know, I'm a single mom and no child support. So obviously, you know, I'm living on the brink myself, just like most of my supporters. But, you know, I think it's worth it at the end of the day to let them know that even though I barely had enough gas money to get here with my tiny campaign contributions, I still made it work. You know, I might not have a bunch of yard signs and commercials and mailers that you throw in the garbage when you get them in the mail, but I've got some campaign literature. I've passed out thousands of flyers and business cards all over the state, you know, and so there are ways around that. And I'm hoping that I can help the people of Michigan at least change the dynamic of politics in general. I want to do to the record industry to politics what Napster did to the record industry.
I like that analogy.
Next generation of politicians here. We need to take it to the next level. We need to just ignore our parents and grandparents that keep telling us to do the same thing over and over again, even though it isn't working. Yeah, I'm a Gen Xer myself, you know, so I'm not super old, but I'm kind of right in the middle there, and I can see it on both sides. But I'm definitely with the youth, because they have more at stake here. They definitely have more at stake.
Yeah, that is very true. And Marcia, if people are more interested in finding out more about your campaign or getting involved in some way, how would they do that?
So you can visit my website at marciasquier.com. I'm also on crowdpack.com. You can find me there. I'm the independent, progressive, non-corporate Green Party candidate for U.S. Senate. And you can find me on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter. I'm at _Marcia, like Marcia, say my name 3 times and then vote for me. Or you can just Google my name and see what comes up. I'm all over, you know, like YouTube and Facebook and things like that. If you want to help support my campaign, don't just vote for me on November 6th. Tell your friends, your family, your coworkers, your neighbors, even random strangers you see at the store to vote for me too. Because that's what I'm doing, and that's what I've been doing for the last 2 years. And I'll tell you what, 9 out of 10 people is super happy I'm running. You know, you get that occasional vote blue no matter who person that's kind of pissed off at me. But you'd be surprised at the great feedback I've been getting all over the state. People coming up and thanking me afterwards for just putting my name on the ballot. You know, just that, regardless of my platform. They're just so happy to have a regular person running. You know?
Yeah, and you should never forget, like, over half the electorate is independent, so that's something to tap into. Well, thank you so much again, Marcia, for taking the time to be interviewed for the show, and good luck on Election Day.
Thank you. Have a great night, guys.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Light my candle, baby. That was our interview with Marcia Squier. I want to thank y'all for tuning in to the show today. Again, you can find all of our episodes on YouTube after the fact. Everybody, have a nice and safe Halloween. And until next time, keep on fighting for that revolution solution.